Thanks for taking the time to download the Inside the Jungle podcast. To send along your feedback about this show, send your emails to insidethejungle@spnt.tv.
It's the Wednesday Night Roundtable, and continuing this week with our position group series, it's the wide receivers. AJ Green was banged up this year, and no Marvin Jones. What letter grade do we give the receivers? That's us all coming up tonight here on the Wednesday Night Roundtable here at CincyJungle.com. Let's go.
This is the Wednesday Night Roundtable with Nick Superlig, Mickey Menzer, Anthony Cosenza, and Scott Bantel.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are around the world. It's the Wednesday Night Roundtable, part of the Inside the Jungle podcast, live here at CincyJungle.com. Coming up on free agency, kicking off very, very soon. Apparently, the Bengals are going to be very, very active. We're on the edge of our seats here on this podcast, as you can see live here at CincyJungle.com. Let's welcome in. The Fearsome Foursome is back yet again for another week of Bengals talk. The one and only Mickey Menzer, the bearded one. How you doing, Mick? How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, Nick. I thought we were gonna. I thought we turned a corner here in Ohio on our weather, and then it sneaks back into us tonight. So hopefully this is the last one of the year.
It's kind of ironic that you're getting all the snow and I'm not.
Right.
I'm missing this storm completely, and you guys are going to get about, 5 to 6 inches of snow tonight?
That's what they said, but who knows what really happened.
Yeah, we're missing that whole thing, thankfully, here in Northwest Ohio. Speaking of another Cincinnati resident braving the elements in his freezing cold basement where his microphone wants to go limp on him, the one and only Scotty Bantel. What's up?
Yo. Yeah, Nick, we just started getting hit with it a little bit before. We had rain all day today, and we walked outside just a few minutes ago. It's coming down pretty good. I say I got probably a good 2 inches already on my car.
Wow, nice. It's a good March snowstorm for you there in the Queen City. Probably one of those wet, heavy snows too.
Oh, I'm sure.
That'll be fun in the morning for your commute. Best of luck, you and Mickey. Speaking of commutes and nobody having to deal with weather issues over on the left coast, it's Anthony Cosenza. What's up, AC?
Not true, Nick. Not true. I'm going to tell you, we got some rain over the weekend, and I got to tell you, the news channels were making it sound like it was Armageddon. I don't even think we had an inch of rain, and it was Storm Watch 2015, and the whole deal, making it super dramatic. But yeah, it's cleared up. It's nice, and always good chatting with you gents as well.
It probably rained for an hour, maybe 20 minutes?
It just kind of sprinkled and spat here and there. That was about it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we don't have those problems here in the winter here in Ohio. All right, enough weather talk. I feel like that's something I kick off the show with every week. I'll try to change it up here on the podcast. As I mentioned, we'll talk about the wide receivers as we continue our position group series. We'll also dip into the free agency discussion as there's been some tweets, some reaction on Twitter today, and over the last few days, over the news of some big-name signings or big-name cuts around the NFL that a lot of Bengals fans are eager to get their hands on here in Cincinnati. We'll discuss some of that as well. But before we do that, something that's near and dear to my heart and something I'm very excited about and pumped about, because of your support of this show and your nominations, Inside the Jungle, it was announced on Sunday night that we are a finalist in the Podcast Awards yet again for the 4th year in a row. Congratulations, AC, Mickey, and Scott. I'm giving you a little golf clap. Yeah, well done. It's pretty cool. 4 years in a row, seeking to become the Buffalo Bills of the Podcast Awards.
Congrats to you, man. I mean, you're congratulating us. This is your deal. So
you guys make the show.
I don't know about that, and I don't want to speak for the other guys, but I mean, congrats to you. You put in a lot of work to this thing, so it's pretty awesome.
Right, I just show up and talk at my computer for an hour every Wednesday. You make the magic happen.
I just think it's cool that our fans went out and nominated us. And if you look at the rest of the category and some of the shows that we're listed with, these are huge names in the broadcasting industry, not just podcasting, but radio broadcasting industry. Dan Patrick, are you kidding me? We're in the same group as him. Steve Austin. Is it Chris Jericho? I don't follow wrestling. That tells you where I'm at. But yeah, it's pretty cool. And my friends over at Ivy Envy, Big Time Cubs podcast, they're a finalist again this year too. So just really thankful and really appreciative of all the support and everybody who went out and nominated the show. And it's pretty cool. Now, it's tough sledding when you're going up against ESPN like we are as well, who has won, I believe, all 4 years that we have been a finalist in the show. But the cool thing too, Mickey, if you think about it, ever since you've joined the show, you've been a finalist in the podcast awards every year, and the Bengals have made the playoffs every year. Is there a correlation here? Is this coincidence?
I'm the Andy Dalton of Inside the Jungle. We get there. We can't win, but we're there. I'll take it.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. So yeah, and I'm sure I'm speaking for Anthony, Mickey, and Scott. Thank you for your nominations. Thank you for supporting our show as much as you do, whether it's through the podcast awards, whether it's through Patreon. It really does mean a lot, and we try to make this the best show we possibly can. I mean, it's not very often that you have the chance to sit down and talk Bengals every Wednesday night with your friends, and friends from around the country, and let alone the world. So we do the show for you, and we can't thank you enough for your support. If you want to support us even more, you can log on to podcastawards.com and vote for our show every day between now and March 24th. That's the last day you can vote for our show. So again, thank you for your support and for your votes and nominations. It really does mean a lot, and looking forward to attending the award show there in Vegas, April 14th in Las Vegas. Okay. Let's talk about the wide receivers, shall we? Obviously, the big name, A.J. Green, is a lightning rod when it comes to the Bengals discussion, which I'm sure we'll bring up at some point tonight. Marvin Jones missed the entire season. He was a guy who was coming off a 10-touchdown year in 2013 and didn't see a single minute of action this year. Mohamed Sanu showed some flashes of brilliance and then was non-existent down the stretch. You got guys like James Wright making contributions, Dane Sanzenbacher, and even Rex Burkhead at points was lined up as a receiver, as well as Giovanni Bernard. So, Mickey, I'll start with you as the longest tenured co-host here. Your thoughts on the receiver group as a whole here in 2014?
I think, it's tough because we're not including tight ends in this group necessarily, but they do definitely help with your receiving game. And so to start the season, the Bengals are without their arguable number 2 receiver, their number 1 receiving tight end. Totally changes the way that they prepared probably all preseason. So they were behind the 8 ball. I don't know. When I look at the performances on the field, you can pull out some games where you had great performances. It seems like years ago, but A.J. Green in the Ravens game was pretty big. And then, I also look at failures from the receivers, and not just the receivers, but I would say the coaching staff and the staff on the team as well. The preseason All-Star Dane Sanzenbacher doesn't find the field when you have all these opportunities to get guys on the field. You keep Brandon Tate out there. He has a good game against the Falcons, but other than that, there's not a lot of highlights this season for him. So I wasn't impressed. I don't know. I think A.J. Green is the type of receiver that will demand respect and get the coverage and the news, but without a supporting cast around that, the Bengals were pretty weak, and we saw a definite decline in the receiving game. Some of that was the focus on the run, but I think some of that was just because we didn't use the tools we had, and the tools we had weren't as good as the ones we wanted to start the season with. So I wasn't real high on them this year.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you about the receivers. I was very disappointed with the group this year. you look at A.J. Green, and I'm not one to look at the stat targets, the stat we hear a lot about. He missed a significant portion of the season due to injuries. 69 catches on 116 targets. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that does seem like that's not a good indicator. That's not good. You would think that means a lot of balls are thrown his way and they're not being completed. And whether that's Andy Dalton forcing it to him because there are no other options for him to throw it to at receiver, but that seems like a very big gap, AC, when you look at the amount of times thrown to him and the amount of catches he actually had. Now, he did top 1,000 yards, and he had 6 touchdown catches here in 2014, but if you had to judge his season and the rest of the group, I'm guessing you're falling in line with Mickey.
Yeah, I look a little further back in time than, Mickey talked about Marvin Jones, and to me that's a big loss. He's not really a speedy guy per se. I mean, he's not an absolute burner, but he is kind of the speed guy in the group. But I look kind of back a little further to the loss of Andrew Hawkins, and a lot of us here kind of just he's gone. It's kind of a bummer, but we'll survive. We got a great group and we'll move on. But as you saw the injuries pile up, and as you saw the lack of a speedy guy, a shifty guy that can kind of work the slot, maybe even catch passes, swing passes as a running back type almost. I mean, we saw Hawkins do that a little bit. I think this offense missed that, and I think that was a toy that Hugh Jackson really would have had some fun with in this offense, and they missed that this year. So I look at that, and then there wasn't really anyone to kind of step up as a slot guy. I think they wanted Sanu to kind of be that guy, but he was kind of pressed into a huge role with injuries to Jones and Green. And he started off pretty well. He had a couple of good games, but he was one of the league leaders, if not the league leader in drops this season. So that doesn't bode well for him. And then Nick, you mentioned the disparity between targets and catches. That's happened. I think I don't have it in front of me, but I think that's happened a couple times so far in AJ Green's career. I think that's. There are some drops that occur there. There's some forcing of the ball on Andy Dalton's part that occurs there, and just some miscommunication from both of them that occurs there. So it's tough to be really hard on this group because there were so many injuries and they had to overcome so much, but you kind of wanted more and hoped for more out of the group.
Yeah, and when you look at the Sanu, the stat line for him in the targets versus the catches, it falls right along the same lines as AJ Green. So maybe that's not something that we really should base a whole lot on. Scott, I know you and we've talked about it here on the program as well about AJ Green seeming to get a free pass when it comes to big time games, when it comes to judging Andy Dalton. But I want to read this email we got this week regarding AJ Green, and I want to get your take on this as well as the rest of the group for 2014. This is from Dan Beck. He says, "Hello, Nick. With your upcoming show on receiver grades, I had a thought, though I doubt the Bengals will do this. They never trade players. They usually cut them without getting anything in return. What would AJ Green's trade value be? I'm sure everyone's knee-jerk reaction is this is a stupid idea, but let's be real. AJ disappears in big games, or if against strong backs, cornerbacks. He doesn't seem to fight for the football anymore, and sometimes short arms the ball for tips. He will demand a large contract, and we have several big contracts up next year. So if we trade him for a first, second, or third round pick, we could trade him to a team like the Raiders or Washington, maybe the Vikings, a team with cap room and looking for a receiver. We could use both picks we get for AJ on receivers and be locked up with rookie contracts. This would give us a number one receiver who should be just as good as AJ and possibly better, and another receiver who could compete with Sanu. This would allow us to use our original picks to fill out the D and some offensive line. Just a thought." That's from Dan Beck. I don't see them trading AJ Green. I'm not entirely opposed to it, but your thoughts on the feedback and the receivers as a whole?
Well, I'll start with the receivers, or AJ Green really as a whole. I thought this season, he did pass 1,000 yards again, which is awesome. I would say his season was disappointing, though. I felt like at times he seemed disinterested, And at times, you looked out there and it just didn't. I don't know, something didn't seem right. So I was a little down on him this year. But this Dan guy is brilliant. I actually talked about this in the after show one day, and I got laughed off the air. But I'm actually working on an article regarding that, as far as should or could the Bengals trade A.J. Green. And the reasoning I actually think they should is, Dan hit on it some, is he does disappear in big games. He's going to demand a huge contract, probably a top 5 contract. But if you look at his numbers, he's not a top 5 receiver. If you look at Pro Football Focus, he scores out about 17 or 18 amongst receivers. We've seen him drop a lot of balls in big situations. And I've said this before, when you look at teams that are built to win in the NFL, teams that get to and win the Super Bowl, normally a big name wide receiver is not part of that formula. Teams that pay receivers big time contracts usually do not end up playing for the Super Bowl or late in the playoffs. So I think you could leverage Green, like Dan said, get a high draft pick wide receiver and probably something else as well. And I think you might be a better team in the long run. With that being said, I do like A.J. Green. Don't get me wrong. But if you're looking at it from a building of a franchise standpoint, I think that trading A.J. Green might actually be their best bet.
You look at the two teams that played in the Super Bowl, AC, New England and Seattle. Now, Seattle, I couldn't tell you maybe all but one receiver name. New England's got Julian Edelman as their best probably wide receiver. Gronk is their big guy, and he's a tight end. Does trading A.J. Green to you make sense if you're going to make your team better?
Not if this team is going to be comprised as it currently is with the quarterback that they currently have on the roster. Everything Scott said makes sense, and if you want to really kind of bolster your roster and plan for the future, avoid salary cap hell, if you will, all of what Scott said makes sense. But you know what? This team has committed themselves to Andy Dalton, and there are a lot of Andy Dalton supporters. I wish the best for the guy, but let's be honest, there's some limitations there. And if you're going to have Andy Dalton be the long-term answer at quarterback, then you need to have an upper echelon, whether you want to call him elite, top 5, top 10, top 15, whatever. You need a very good wide receiver, which A.J. Green is. And he consistently puts up 1,000 yards a season. He hovers around double-digit touchdowns a year. I mean, you got to hang on to a guy like that for your quarterback if the plan is and has been to build around Andy Dalton and give him as many weapons as possible. So that's why I'm not in the boat of trade and get picks and build that way, because A.J. Greens aren't really readily available in the draft all that often, especially when the Bengals seem to pick, or maybe when these other teams seem to pick. Now, if you have an Aaron Rodgers or, as you mentioned, one of the 2 Super Bowl quarterbacks on your roster, then the trade kind of makes sense. But at this point, I don't know why you would do that if you're the Bengals.
Mickey, your thoughts on the feedback?
It's interesting. I'm labeled a Dalton supporter, but a lot of what AC says makes sense. But on the flip side is, I think that when you have limitations at the quarterback position and you have a receiver like A.J. Green, he's not, Calvin Johnson in his heyday. He's not that dominant. He does disappear in big games. He does short arm balls. He's not as good as Bengals fans think he is, and I'm probably going to get crushed for that. But he's not. So you saw some this season when AJ was out, how Sanu stepped up in the beginning of the season, and maybe if Andy Dalton's not looking at AJ Green every play, it's a little bit of a different feeling offense. But Scott talks about, what if you're able to trade him? He does hold a bunch of value in the league. What if you're able to trade him for a couple early picks, or you're able to trade and just get a stud, lineman in a pick, something like that, where you're making your whole offense better. You're giving your quarterback more time. You're making your running game stronger. You could have some more young weapons. I think if you could make a deal like that, it's a no-brainer. And if Al Davis was still in Oakland, I think you could just totally crush him on a trade like that. But I don't think the Bengals will do it. I think that's all hypothetical. But I could see a ton of upside from trading him. And I'm a big A.J. Green fan too. I just don't think he's as good as the value that Bengals fans put on him.
I'm glad you mentioned the disappearing in big games. I'm still waiting for him to show up in a playoff game or a primetime game. I think if you are to trade him and you can get multiple picks for him, especially high early round picks, it's not just things that you can draft on the offensive side. There are people you can draft defensively that will make you even better, that will make up for the lack of the offensive output that you might be getting if you do lose an A.J. Green. That means your defense is stronger and you can withstand more 3-and-outs, which we don't want, but you know what I mean. Maybe you get that offensive, that dominant left guard that we might lose out, if Bowling leaves. Maybe you get that left tackle that's the bookend fill-in for Whitworth moving forward. Again, this is the hypothetical. We have no idea if this is even going to happen. But I agree with you, Mickey. He's not as good as most Bengals fans think he is. If he's going to be considered that top 5 receiver, that top elite guy, he needs to show up in big games, and he just doesn't.
Yeah, Nick, I was taking a look at this. This is a great year to take a look at whether or not this makes sense with Green being out a couple games. He was either out a couple of games or he was injured most of the game where he had no catch. So I consider those as games without Green. And in games without Green this year, the Bengals were 3-1-1. So, winning percentage-wise, they basically had the same winning percentage whether Green was in there or not. I know AC probably disagrees with me, but, those are the facts. I mean, when he's been out, the Bengals really haven't dropped off much offensively.
Jim in the chat room says, such a pointless conversation, they aren't trading Green. Well, that's why we just got done saying this is a hypothetical. And Dan, we appreciate the email. Thank you for chiming in. I just think that, for a guy like A.J. Green, who's supposed to be the number one big name receiver here in town, I expect more from him throughout the season on a consistent basis. I know he was injured in 2014 as well. Let's talk about Mohamed Sanu a little bit, guys. And here's a receiver who, when he was drafted, there was a lot of hype, a lot of promise for what he had to offer. There was a 4-game stretch in his first year where the lights really seemed to turn on, and then he broke his foot and missed the rest of the season. I think last year in 2014, I don't know what happened, but he seemed to struggle quite a bit in 2014. And I know you're a big fan, Mickey, but what do you make of our, I guess you can call him our third-string receiver, or number 3 receiver, and our number 3 quarterback?
I guess I'm labeled as a Sanu fan too because he's a super nice guy. I got to hang out with him. I was kind of in love with the idea of what he could bring here. I thought he could be a Hines Ward. This is a big body guy that in college made his career out of putting himself in between the quarterback and the defender and making the catch. He was a stud at Rutgers doing that. I think, the more we talk about the offensive side of the football for the Bengals, and it seems like every offseason for the past 3 or 4 years, it's the same theory, is I don't feel like we use the personnel we have correctly. I feel like we fail with our tight ends. Why was Jeremy Hill not the starting running back the whole season? Why last year did it take until the last, end stretch of the season, 2 years ago, I guess, for Marvin Jones to become the number 2 guy when he put up just sick numbers? Like, I feel like, why is Sanzenbacher not, that third down guy? In the times we've used him, he's come up huge. The play calling is questionable. I feel like we fail on offense, and so the reflection of that is the performance of some of our players. Is it that Sanu is really just not finding a place, can't solidify his role in this team, or is it that we just don't know how to use a guy like Sanu? And I as we see more players come through, I feel like it's the latter, and we see some of it on the defensive side of the ball also. So I don't know what we have in Sanu. I still like the idea of what we could get out of a player like that. Sure, everyone talks about. I mean, some yahoos will put on Twitter that he should start over Dalton, which, I mean, those are the kind of people that I just block. But those gimmick plays are cool, but you're going to hit one of those once every 4 weeks. So awesome, so you can score 4 touchdowns a year with the guy. But I really like the idea of him being almost another tight end type guy, short yardage, making the tough catch, getting tackled. He's not going to burn you down the field. I just don't think we're using these guys right. So I don't know. The jury's still out for me. I think he's a heck of a player. We just have to figure out how to use the weapons we have.
AC, you mentioned the drops, and he was one of the league leaders in drops. Is that something that you can coach? Is that something that could be fixed? Because I know, somebody like Greg Little, who, let's face it, we didn't get to see much of him in Cincinnati, but he was labeled as a guy who dropped a lot of footballs. Brendan Edwards was another one of those guys who had the history and was known for dropping footballs. Is this something that you think that is just a mental thing? Can this be corrected, or is this just a case of maybe Dalton and Sanu just not being on the same page?
Well, it's circumstantial. I mean, if the drops are mental type of issues, that's going to be very hard to correct and get past that. I mean, Gresham's got the same deal, and he hasn't gotten past that in 5 years. So if it's a mental thing, then that's one thing. I haven't reviewed all the drops personally that Sanu had, so I don't know if it was in bad weather. I don't know if there were questionable throws. I do remember a couple that were very catchable balls that he did drop, just off the top of my head. But Sanu, as myself as a former coach, Sanu's one of those guys that you love, but he frustrates you because he makes the spectacular plays all the time, but some of the routine stuff doesn't come so easily, and that's pretty frustrating, and it's frustrating as a Bengals fan to watch as well. He'll make the one-handed catch on a fade in the end zone, and he'll make the one-handed catch and take it to the house across the middle, but some other ones that hit him right in the hands, he'll drop. So I have seen, I follow him on social media, and I too like the guy. I've met him as well. He's a very likable guy. I find myself rooting for him, but I follow him on social media. I see him do some of these drills that seem to be focusing on hand-eye coordination, so obviously that has to help in some capacity. But I just think he was pressed into a role that didn't really fit him, and I don't know if he's a true outside wide receiver in the NFL. I remember coming out of Rutgers as a rookie, I think it was Mike Mayock that said every catch that Mohamed Sanu will have on the NFL level will be contested, and you kind of see that. There's a kind of a lack of separation from defenders, and a lot of times he'll still make some plays, but he's still a valuable guy to this team and to this offense. I just think he's more kind of what Mickey said, almost a small tight end that you can plug into the slot. And if you have A.J. Green out one side and maybe Jones or another guy outside, that's kind of where he's more comfortable, I think, in the NFL.
Scott, do you have anything you want to add about Sanu?
Well, I was very excited about the way he started off the season. At the midway point, he was on pace for 80 catches, about 1,300 yards, and 8 or 9 touchdowns. So, he really disappeared in the second half, and I think that was a product of he was playing outside, and that's not where he's going to excel. His spot is going to be in the slot. I don't know if he's the answer for the slot for the Bengals, but I think that's where he's going to have his best chance of succeeding. So I think 2014 he was outside of his element. I'll be interested to see how he does in this year, with him back in the slot where I would expect him to be. I think he'll play better. His numbers may not be as much, but I think he'll be more effective.
I want to ask you guys this question without looking, and maybe you already are, I don't know, but I want to know who do you think led the team in yards per catch per reception? Average yards per catch. They're all thinking. For those of you listening to the podcast, they're looking up and thinking. Mickey, you got an answer?
Brandon Tate.
That is incorrect.
I mean, are we talking minimum amount of catches or just whoever?
Just whoever.
It's James Wright then.
Are you looking, Anthony? He was looking.
I swear I wasn't looking. I swear I'm not looking. I swear.
James Wright had 5 catches this year for 91 yards with an 18.2 yard average. That was highest on the team. Now again,
where was Tate?
5 catches. Brandon Tate, 11.4.
Because I know he had the big one. It might have been from Sanu in that Atlanta game. Was it down the sideline? And I know he didn't have a ton of catches, so that's why I guessed that.
Wright had that miracle one against, I think it was Tampa Bay, that 3rd and long or whatever. Yeah.
So yeah, here's a guy who a lot of people think could potentially be a big impact receiver for the Bengals. Are you surprised that we didn't see more of him in 2014 when you consider the struggles that they had at that position? Because, you see he has the ability to make plays down the field. He led the team in yards per catch. But, for whatever reason, he wasn't targeted a whole lot, just 16 times this year.
It kind of goes back to what I said before. I don't think we used the guys right. Brandon Tate was on the field more than he should have been. The guy hasn't been a good receiver for a long time. He's only on this team for his kick return ability, which that's questionable. So, yeah, there were times where Wright came up huge. Like Anthony said on the long 3rd down. It's weird why you don't see more of that. More of these guys getting integrated. I don't understand that from our coaching staff.
And Wright also, I think he had some injury stuff at the end of the year. So I think he missed 4 or 5 games at the end of the season. So that didn't help him. I think he's kind of a guy that you maybe round out your wide receiver crew with. If you keep 5 or 6, maybe he's kind of lower on the pecking order there. This is a guy that didn't have a catch in college his senior year. Granted he had, I think it was Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham in front of him, but he didn't have a catch his senior year, and you go, well, this guy's you're gonna draft this guy in the what was it, the 6th or 7th round? So I don't know. I kind of liked what I saw out of him, but he had some injury stuff. The college production wasn't really there. I don't know. I think he'll have a shot to make the back end of the wide receiver core this next year, but I don't know if he's going to ever be a huge guy.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Mickey with the way the Bengals use guys or don't use guys. We've talked about this before with the young guys, especially. Marvin seems to have a loyalty, maybe to a fault, to his veterans and not give these young guys, a chance to make an impact early in their career. And James Wright maybe is a good example of that this year, where with Jones out and with Eifert out and Green out at times, why didn't he have a bigger role in the offense? It's a good point.
Maybe we will see him come on here in 2015. You never know, because we're not sure what the Bengals are going to do in the draft or in free agency, which leads us to, before we get to our grades for the receiver group, this leads to our next question. This is from Fadl in Malta. He says, question for Inside the Jungle tonight. If you could select one wide receiver from free agency, who would it be and why? So I'll start off with you, Mickey. Who would you pick?
That's a tough one, Nick. I'm, looking at the free agent list. And there's recognizable names up there, but there's also huge salaries that go along with them. So I'd probably go down in the second, and I'm gonna go with a guy that the Bengals just had a talk with. I don't even feel great about this. I'm gonna say Jacoby Jones would be a guy I'd pick because of the extras you get from him. I know he's not going to come in and light up your receiving core, but we would answer the question at kick return. and it's another guy that could stick it to the Ravens. So it'd have to be something like that for me.
All right. I was surprised he left town without a contract.
Yeah.
I thought for sure that would be a huge upgrade from a special team standpoint over Brandon Tate. Dave Wallman in the chat room says Randall Cobb, AC. Are you thinking along those same lines?
Yeah, I suppose that's one. If we're talking, money's no object and all that kind of stuff. There's two guys that kind of spring to mind immediately for me. There's two things that I think this wide receiver core needs. It needs a speedy guy and/or a guy that's just a slot guy that moves the chains. And there's two guys that kind of pop out to me. Brian Hartline is a guy you can plug into the slot for a couple of years and he'll move the chains and kind of complement the guys on the outside pretty well.
You just made Mickey happy.
Yeah, I know. I bet. And Torrey Smith, stretch the field with that guy. You pair that guy up with Jones, Sanu, Green, and you've got a real fast guy, and he's still pretty young. So those are two guys that kind of pop out to me a little bit. And Cobb is obviously he's kind of an Andrew Hawkins type as well, but obviously much more athletic than Hawkins is.
But with Jones and Hartline, that's going to come at a price for sure, and that's not something. As far as free agency goes, I'm still not believing what I'm seeing when it comes to the Bengals and making any movement, especially at that position group. Scott, if you had to pick some wide receivers in free agency, who would you go with? Brandon Tate? Just kidding.
No. I agree with Anthony with the speed and the slot guys. A couple guys, if you're talking money's no object, then Randall Cobb, because I think he kind of fits both of those bills. If you're talking about actually fitting into the salary cap, the guy I liked just re-signed in Dallas, which was Cole Beasley, a fast slot guy. I thought he would have been worth a look. The other guy, it'd be an interesting sign, big name, but I don't think he's going to have a big price tag this year, is Wes Welker. I only say that on you sign him for a year, nothing longer. But I think he would be an interesting fit. He gives you that small, quick, reliable guy over the middle for Dalton, a good outlet. So, that's the one that would intrigue me. I don't think the Bengals go that route, but I would be interested in him.
Those are who we would pick at receiver. I would love to hear your thoughts. So InsideTheJungle@spnt.tv is the email address if you want to chime in and let us know who you'd like to see the Bengals sign in free agency at the wide receiver spot. Let's give our letter grades, shall we, for the wide receivers? Mickey, I'll start with you. I'm going to go, I guess you're going pretty low.
Yeah, I'm going to go D. I just don't think that was a strength of this team at all this year.
All right, Mickey says D. How about you, AC?
I'm going to kind of cop out here, and I think I'm going to copy one of your grades for another group you had, Nick. I'm going to kind of go incomplete or no credit. I think there was just too many injuries, and obviously I know about grades because I work at a university in my day job, so that's why. So there's too many injuries to really totally gauge exactly what this group could do. Obviously, it sounds like they're going to address it in the draft and or free agency this year, but I'm going to kind of go that incomplete type of route.
All right. Any extra credit, Scott? I just wanted to throw another education term out there because I don't work at a university. How about you, Scott?
Well, I don't work at a university either, but if I remember correctly, back in kindergarten, my report card had just satisfactory and unsatisfactory on it.
That's right.
So if we're going kindergarten style grades, I'm going to go unsatisfactory. If we're grading like the big boys, I'm going with Mickey. I got to go D. Coming into the year, I had big expectations. I know with Jones out, that changes things. But, like I said, I thought Green's year was disappointing for Green. Sanu started hot but ended up disappointing, and the rest were just, you might as well have had us out there running routes. So I'd go D.
Yeah, that's I don't want to go too low and say an F because I think. When you still get 1,000 yards like A.J. Green did, and despite all the games he missed, that is pretty impressive. And I mentioned earlier too that he shies away in big games, but I do remember in the blowout loss at home to the Steelers when they were close in the fourth quarter. He had over 200 yards receiving against the Steelers that day. I think Ike Taylor's still trying to find A.J. Green. So he did have a pretty good game against the Steelers, but for whatever reason, those 1,000 yards this year just seemed like nothing. It just seemed like, he fumbled in big games at crucial moments. And a lot of short arms as well. So for me, I'll go D-. I don't want to go F, but I'll go D-. I was pretty unimpressed with the receiver core this year. And again, who's to say that even if Marvin Jones was healthy with the new offense that Hugh Jackson decided to run, maybe his numbers would have been down too. We saw a bigger focus on the run game this year, and maybe that has a little bit more to do with it as well. Those are our letter grades. Love to hear your thoughts. Inside the Jungle at spnt.tv is the email address if you want to chime in and have those thoughts heard here on the program. Let's talk a little free agency, shall we? AC, you sent me a couple tweets today, a couple links today from our good pal Jeff Hobson regarding free agency. Why don't you fill us in?
According to his tweets, it sounds like the Bengals are going to try and lock up one of their internal free agent priorities before the onset of free agency, which is March 10th. They're also still kind of focusing on, I believe it was Bowling and Malaluga. So one would think that Nugent was probably that guy that they're probably looking to sign, and he's obviously going to be the easiest to re-sign than some of those other guys. Noticeably absent is Gresham in all of this, both in the tweets that Hobson sent out and another article he put out this week. So it looks like the team probably is moving on from them. They've had a couple visits, as everybody probably knows at this point, tight end, H-back James Casey, and as Mickey mentioned earlier, Jacoby Jones. So, that's kind of where they're at. It's good to see them kind of already bringing some people in, getting the feelers out there, and then I don't know if we want to talk about this, but Coley Harvey, the ESPN beat guy for the Bengals, kind of interestingly put out that he predicts that the Bengals would sign Hardy from Carolina, the guy that's got some baggage but is incredibly talented. So that's obviously a polarizing topic as well.
Yeah, why don't we get into that? Because it was an interesting year in 2014 when it comes to off-field issues around the NFL. The Bengals typically don't make the Sports Center unless they're talking about an arrest. And, this is something that the Bengals have shied away from over the last few years, Mickey. And they've done a good job of weeding out those bad guys in the locker room. But if you could get a guy like Greg Hardy, who's a really good pass rusher in this league, at I would guess probably a discounted price because a lot of teams might want to avoid him due to the PR baggage, is this something you take a flyer on, or do you just feel like, you know what, it's not worth it?
It's a tough one, Nick. I'm going to tell you, I think Greg Hardy is a douchebag, but I also am one of the guys that I don't know why we put athletes up on this pedestal and make them our moral compass. Like, they were gifted the genetic lottery of being great at sports. They weren't gifted with the best brains. So I don't know why we I mean, this is bad, but it's like, dogs bite. They're real fast, but they bite. Like, it's just idiotic that we focus on this. I don't want the Bengals to sign distractions, but I can see why a guy like Hardy would be, appetizing to a team that wants a nasty defense. So, I don't know, man. I'm on the fence.
It only took 186 episodes for the word douchebag to be uttered on this program, and
I haven't said it before.
I think that's a first.
Sorry.
I agree with you, though.
The label fits.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. I think there are guys in the draft that you can get rather than sign him. Would you rather have Sue or Hardy?
Right, but what if I told you signing one of those guys takes you to the Super Bowl?
I don't know if Greg Hardy signing takes you to the Super Bowl.
No. Forget the player, but signing one of those idiots gets you there. Then are you buying a Greg Hardy jersey? I mean, because you'd see him all over.
Well, I wouldn't buy a jersey, but I see your point. I guess that's what makes the debate so fun and difficult to dissect, because from a PR standpoint, I don't know. That's rough.
I mean, the Patriots cheat all the time, get caught all the time, but you'll take it because they win the Super Bowl all the time. So
that's a good point.
I don't know. It's interesting.
Nobody else.
I mean, no,
okay. Go ahead.
I'd almost take a chance on him at this point. Not that I condone what he allegedly did to his fiance or girlfriend or anything like that. And I hate when Harvey put that out. I don't know if you saw other NFL media outlets. They're saying, "Oh, the Bengals haven't had problems bringing in trouble players in the past," and it's like, obviously, you haven't been paying attention to this team in the last 4 or 5 years.
Do your freaking homework.
Right. You're really hanging on to something that's almost 10 years old. So that kind of stuff bothers me. But you know what? He could come at a relatively cheap price for the production he could bring because of his baggage. He might not miss any time, since he already sat out an entire year, and because of Adrian Peterson's situation, Hardy's looking for reinstatement as well. So I don't know. I just think that's such an area that this team needs to improve. It's so important in this league, especially with so many good quarterbacks and whatnot. I just think that would be a great addition at something that wouldn't be an absolute choker of a price. But I am a little leery because of, is he going to be a repeat guy? What's the reputation going to be? But I'm a fan of bringing him in. He'd be one of the biggest free agent signings I think this team would have for a while on a number of different levels.
Right, no kidding. Scott, I'm sure you've got a take on this as well.
Look at AC throwing out there at a choker of a price when talking about Greg Hardy. I think pun was intended.
Oh man, terrible.
Oh my gosh, we've seen
unintentional, absolutely unintentional.
Oh boy.
I bet. Boy, this is a tough one for me. From a physical standpoint and simply from a on the field standpoint, he would be great, a great upgrade for the Bengals. From a off the field standpoint, this is just there's certain things I have trouble with and other things I can see past. This one, if you read the facts surrounding this case, dragging this girl around by her hair, choking her, threatening to kill her, throwing her on a bed of guns. I mean, it's pretty a disturbing picture, and from all accounts, the reason why the case didn't go further is that Hardy paid her off, and then the prosecutors couldn't find her. So it doesn't seem like a guy. He's not a good guy, and he doesn't seem like the type of guy who's really learned. So I'm concerned about, would he do something again that gets him suspended? But from a, simply from a football standpoint, I couldn't blame him if they go after him.
I don't think that it'll happen, but I guess we've seen crazier things when it comes to the Bengals and free agency. But one guy who surprisingly was not franchised by his team, that is Detroit Lions defensive tackle Ndamukong Suh, is a free agent. And he would come at a very big cost, and there are probably a lot of teams lining up to get him. Now, he's another one of those guys who has some issues, but this is on-field issues. There's no questions about his his lifestyle off the field, but this is a guy who can't seem to get out of his own way on the field with violent play after the whistle. So, Mickey, I'll send it to you. If you could get Suh, and you're going to give him a pretty big contract, is he somebody you team up next to Geno Atkins and make this defense formidable?
I'm going to preface this by saying I don't think, at least in the last, I'll say 8 years, any of the top free agent players are worth the money that they eventually demand. I just don't see it, and I will lump Suh in there. That being said, I think he's a heck of a player. I think adding him to what we already have on this defensive line would be pretty freaking incredible. And his situation is a little different. People hate him because he's, hits quarterbacks illegally, he stomps on legs, whatever, like all dumb stuff. But I would take him. Yeah, if you could get him affordably, absolutely, I would take him.
Yeah, here's my thing. I mean, obviously, I think this one's going to be a little bit of a pipe dream for Sue to the Bengals. I don't think that's really going to be a thing. But I mean, I'm not a guy who condones just terrible behavior like that. But I also look at the Pittsburgh Steelers and I see Antonio Brown kick the Cleveland Browns kicker in the face, and I see them constantly hitting guys late and taunting and hitting guys in the helmet. Mickey just kind of said in a little message, Hines Ward, the little crack block on Keith Red. You almost need these type of guys, and I've talked about the bully thing. You want guys like that to really make yourself, kind of a bulldog in your own division and in the NFL. But in terms of overall scope of, finances and need and everything for the Bengals, I would almost look at Nick Fairley, the other guy from Detroit who's hitting the free agent market. He'll be cheaper. He's underachieved a little bit, but he's kind of the Bengals MO type of guy. High first-round pick, underachieved a little bit. Let's see what we can get out of him. Let's see if we can get a deal. Someone like that to kind of pair up as well would be kind of interesting too. And I don't know exactly what he would command, but they do need some more beef and youth up front, and I think one of those two guys would be pretty exciting.
I see your point about Fairley because he would come cheaper. I guess I expected more from him when the Lions drafted him and teamed him up with Sue. Fairley coming out of college was a pretty dominant player himself out of Auburn, and yet for whatever reason in Detroit, those two, I guess I expected more from Fairley. And for me, if you're going to bring in Fairley, I don't know how that's. If you look at how they played in Detroit, you team up Fairley and Atkins. It's not really.
Let me kind of clarify. Yeah, I know I get your point. Let me just kind of clarify. I would think even with the Bengals' exorbitant amount of cap space, and I know Scott's got some thoughts on this too, but even with the exorbitant amount of cap space the Bengals have, it's basically Sue, maybe some internal guys, and that's your free agency period. But if you get, you go Fairley, maybe get another pretty decent linebacker that's on the open market, then you re-sign more guys. You just got a little more space to go elsewhere. That's kind of where I was going with that idea. But no, I agree with you though, Nick.
Yeah, Nick, when it comes to Sue, I mean, I don't know. I don't think, I'm not going to say I wouldn't like Sue on the Bengals. That would be pretty silly to say, but I think he's a similar player to Atkins. They're both defensive tackles whose strength is rushing the passer. And I think the Bengals would do better off getting a defensive tackle whose strength is more of a run, kind of clogging the running lanes. So that's not Sue. And I just don't think, I don't think Sue is. I don't think he's going to ever live up to the contract he's going to get. I think of Albert Hainsworth. I don't know that he'll have that type of, bust. But, I'd be concerned paying a guy like Sue. I'm not sure that once he gets this big money that you're going to get even the same Sue that you're getting now, which, to be honest, I don't think the Sue that you're seeing right now is worth the contract that he's going to get. So I think that's a lose-lose situation for any team that signs him. I don't think you're going to get the productivity out of Ndamukong Suh that, for what you're paying. So, I like them going after a lesser named defensive tackle. Personally, I would like Pot Roast, but, I would like more of a run clogger to pair next to Geno Atkins to maybe occupy two blockers so Atkins gets more one-on-one opportunities and can get after the quarterback.
One other guy, too, that was cut this week in the NFL, and that is Philadelphia Eagles' Trent Cole. He went to the University of Cincinnati, and Twitter erupted the other day when that news came out, and a lot of Bengals fans wanting to jump on the Trent Cole bandwagon. He's 32 on the tail end of his career. And there was mention that how he would be a good fit here in Cincinnati, but 32 really scares me. And if I'm going to be spending in free agency, I don't want to be spending money on guys at the tail end of their careers. I want somebody who's on the up or potentially, in the prime of their career. I don't know what your guys' thoughts on Trent Cole, but I mean, it would be a good fit in the sense that he's a hometown guy coming back to Cincinnati. But again, that 32-year-old age scares me.
I mean, I see your point. I think there was kind of some similar talk with DeMarcus where I don't know if he was 32. I don't know how old he is offhand, but he was up there in age, and there was some similar talk once he was not going to be re-signed by Dallas, and some people kind of were scared off, but he still not only made a decent amount of money, but was very productive, this year. So, I see the point. I think that's a type of player that I've constantly talked about that would complement the bigger bodies up front that the Bengals have. More of the speed guy, the smaller guy that can run around to tackle instead of through them. So I think it'd be a good complement. I just, like you, Nick, I don't know how much he has left in the tank.
Yeah, it's and look, the Bengals. We talk about all this free agency and guys we'd like to see. The Bengals don't do this. They don't spend in free agency, and yet we continue to hear that's going to change. I guess we'll find out here in the next coming days as free agency will begin and the new league year will begin here. If I'm not mistaken, March 7th, guys, is that correct? Not everybody agree at once.
March 7th for what?
The new league year when people can sign free agents.
Well, it's 10th.
March
10th.
But I think there's a new rule where there's like a 3-day window where agents can talk to teams on behalf of players, and I think that's where that March 7th date is.
So that's March 7th. Okay.
Yeah.
I knew there was March 7th in there somewhere. So March 10th is when free agency begins, and players can sign with respective teams. So you'll have to keep your eye out here at CincyJungle.com for all the latest in news regarding Bengals and free agents. Not just the outside free agents that might be taking visits, but our own free agents as well. As we should probably be having some news surrounding guys like Mike Nugent, Ray Maluga, Clint Bowling here in the next few days. Before we get out of here, let's do some shout-outs.
Shout-outs!
Start us off, Mick.
I'm going to start with my man Brett Bradford. He was the first, maybe not the first to you, Nick, but the first congratulatory tweet on the podcast awards that I saw. So, you always get a special place in the heart when you're sending us praise. The other person I'm going to shout out, I'm not sure their Twitter handle, maybe someone here knows, but it's Nick Suberlink for once again taking the show to the awards. I know that he gets pretty geeked about that, so I get excited, for him and for the show. So I just want to say congrats to Nick.
Thank you, man. And thank you to Brett as well. Yeah, he was the first to send congratulatory tweets as well, and appreciate that. Brett is here in the chat room with us tonight, and pretty cool to see him talking Bengals amongst all of us here tonight. So thank you. And thank you, Mickey. And thank you for all you do as well. AC, how about you? Shout out?
Might be stealing this one, but I'm going to shout out Dave Wellman. He's in the chat room. It's been a little while since he's been there. He goes by Beer Run. I guess I stole Nick. Sorry, buddy. Goes by Beer Run. He hits up the CJ boards a little bit, and he and I used to do a podcast together for the website. So, Dave, good seeing you, man. Miss you. And I'm going to also shout out AJ Green. He got pooped on a little bit on this show, so I'm going to shout him out.
Good one. He did. And maybe he'll step up next year because of this. Doubtful. How about you, Scott?
I feel like Anthony's going to wear his AJ Green jersey next week just to try to even things out on the show. Couple shout-outs this week. The first one, I'm going to shout out Curt Schilling. Not a fan of the guy, but I'm sure you guys all saw his rants on Twitter this week. And, I couldn't agree more with what he did. With social media, especially Twitter, I'm sure you guys see it on your Twitter accounts and in the comments on Cincy Jungle at times. There's just trolls out there that like to hide behind not having their name out there. And to get some of them called out and have their feet held to the fire, it's great. And if you're one of those trolls out there, just get off social media. You're an idiot or a douchebag. Bring Mickey's word back in here. I feel like it needs to be brought in more. So shout out to Schilling. And then agree with Mickey. I got to give the shout out to Nick. Nick, congrats on put together a great show. You well deserved to get the nomination as a finalist again, the podcast awards. So congrats. Thanks for all the hard work you do on the show.
Well, thank you. Like I said earlier, you guys make the show. I just direct it. I'm the point guard for this program here, and I give and go. So thank you for everything and the kind words. I'm going to give a shout out this week to Simon Hunter. Simon is a fan of the podcast who lives across the pond, and they have a Bengals UK group. Mike Smith, who's a big fan as well, and has been on this show. They meet every once in a while over there in England, and he's a big fan of the show. So Simon, here's a shout out for you this week. If you want a shout out here on the program, you can always follow me on Twitter. I am at Nick Suberling. Where can they follow you, AC?
At CJ Anthony CUI.
Mickey.
At Who Dey Fans.
Last but not least, beam me up, Scotty.
At Scott Bantel.
All right. Final thoughts as we wrap up episode 186. Mickey Menzer.
I think it's going to be interesting to see who's rumored where, who talks to who, and then I honestly think this might be the season where we see a little bit more sanity in free agency, where the first wave isn't as hot as it has been in years past, and salaries come down a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out in this next week.
Yeah, we'll find out here in the next couple days. I'm still cautiously optimistic and not holding my breath over free agency, but we will find out over the next couple days. Thank you again, Mickey, as always, for joining us. Mickey does a great job with the Bengals Bites every day at CincyJungle.com, so make sure you check that out. Final thoughts, Mr. Anthony Cosenza.
The Beam Me Up reference is pretty appropriate this week after, unfortunately, Mr. Leonard Nimoy passed away. I'm not a big Star Trek guy. I love Star Wars. Never really got into Star Trek, but, obviously R.I.P. to him. But since I didn't shout you out, Nick, I much appreciated for what you do for the show, and congratulations on this show getting national attention again. I'm personally pretty stoked on that, and I'm sure you are as well. But congrats, man.
Thank you very much, and appreciate all you do for the show. And I'm glad you're a part of the Inside the Jungle team. The show is this has just leaps and bounds grown since you joined, and it's leaped and grown since Scotty B joined us as well. Scott, thank you for all you do. Final thoughts?
Thanks, Nick. Boy, next week, Nick, we're going to have actual free agency things to talk about because we'll be one way. Well, maybe not for the Bengals, but for other teams. So we'll be one day deep into free agency and probably an exciting time. Between now and then, you should see some other big names, cut for salary cap purposes. So some more guys that should be out there on the market for the Bengals to take a look at.
We will find out in the next couple days whether or not the Bengals will be active in free agency. I can't say this enough. The Bengals over the last few years have not been one of those players in free agency, but we'll find out in the next couple days. That's for sure. Thank you, gentlemen, for all you do here for the program and for CincyJungle.com. Just a reminder, we've talked about it the last couple of days. Inside the Jungle will be live April 30th at Lachey's Bar and Grill in the Over the Rhine section of Cincinnati. Come check us out. We'll be live at 8 o'clock Eastern that night, April 30th. Put it in your calendar and come join us as we'll be broadcasting live during the draft. Hopefully we'll have some cool guests. And, it'll be a lot of fun. And, again, thanks to Scott for putting that together and hooking us up with Lachey's. So put it in your calendar so that we see you in person April 30th at Lachey's Bar in Over the Rhine. Also, don't forget you can vote for Inside the Jungle and the Podcast Awards over at podcastawards.com. Vote every day until March 24th. Again, that website, podcastawards.com. It's time to get out of here. But special thanks to my associate producers, Andy Lanham, Larry Rolston, Mike Vardy, and our newest associate producer, Fado Bayari. And I really hope I didn't butcher your last name, Fado. Appreciate your support of the program. Inside the Jungle is an SPNT production. For more information about our other podcasts, log on to spnt.tv. And for all the latest news around the Bengals, free agency, the NFL, and more, check us out over at cincyjungle.com. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. We'll see you next Wednesday night for another edition of the Round Table. Peace. If Tate is the first signing, I'm quitting this podcast. It is done.
Did you see my follow-up?
Yeah.
See you, AC. Appreciate all the stuff you do. Appreciate it.
Did you see my follow-up that you fall off the wagon of your Diet Mountain Dew wagon?
I have not. I've been doing good.
Yeah, but not if they sign Tate.
Oh. A case. That would be... Oh, man.
He'll go get 2 liters. He'll put some 2 liters in.
Double fist.
He'll put them in brown bags, sit on park benches.
One of those drinking hats on with 2 liters of Diet Dew stuck to him.
Sounds like Sue. I'm just seeing this from Josh tweeting this out. Dolphins and Colts expected to make strong runs at Sue. All right.
Yeah, Dolphins have had some success signing big names recently.
Oh, yeah.
Sarcasm is laid on pretty thick there.
I was in Cincinnati this
Nick,
past
I forgot
weekend.
to... Oh, really?
You were?
Yeah, I was. My mom, she works for Princeton's, I want to say, Alumni Association. I don't know what their actual title of it is, but she had a gala, whatever you want to call it. I say gala. At the
It's only gala when you're there, Nick.
I it was at the Sharonville Convention Center, so we were in town for that, and you know who Bob Johnson is?
Yeah.
He was there.
Nick, you said she's in the alumni relations at Princeton?
Yeah, I don't know what her exact title is, but she does she's like the director, I don't know.
So what I'm hearing is that she has an inside contact to Carmen Electra, and we can work on getting her on the podcast.
I don't know how inside she is.
I mean, think about this. That would drive some traffic.
Did she go to Princeton? I thought she went to the School for Creative and Performing Arts.
Nope. She went to
We
Princeton.
had Nadia Larissa on.
That's right. Scott doesn't know who
Which,
that
Scott,
is.
if you're not familiar, you should Google that.
Yeah, but I'd have to know how to spell it. You'll have to put it in the chat.
Here, I'll put it.
Or Bedricky.
Oh, how does she spell it?
The name Nadia just sounds naughty.
That's gonna bother me that I can't.
What did she do?
She was in Playboy.
Nadia Comaneci, is that it?
No, I found.
I got it.
I see her YouTube channel.
Nadia, what did you say her last name was?
I have to find it on Facebook. Give me a minute. I know her real name because she played volleyball at BG.
It's Bedricky, right?
Just
Yeah, but she's got like
look
a
at that.
fake name too.
Doesn't it
Larissa.
have her name on that poster you got?
Yeah, she went by Larissa.
I got
Huh.
it.
Yeah, I found it too. Or that one too. Yeah, that works.
There you go,
Yep,
Scott.
that's her. Oh, that's definitely not G-rated.
She was on the show.
Yep.
She played football in the that women's league.
The lingerie football league, that's right, for Chicago.
Ah.
Yeah, she played
Ah.
volleyball for PG.
Really?
Yep.
Ah, it's one of Brett's customers. Look at that.
She was on episode. That was like your second episode, wasn't it, Vicky?
It was pretty early on.
So like, I think the strike was still going. Like I think that was all going down.
Yeah.
So, man, with the way the show unfolded tonight, Nick, I think we need to be nominated for the mature podcast category. We're talking about some limp mics. We got this lady. We got Brett's stories in the chat room. I mean, phew.
Yeah. Yeah.
Inside the jungle has jumped the shark.
Episode 31.
I knew it was in the 30s. I have to find the link.
I got it.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah, I'll post it. My machine's crawling, but
I don't know if you noticed this. And again, it's pretty minor because I don't really publish the video part. But like your audio and video, like don't seem to link. Like it's off.
mine?
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
what's going on there.
It totally on my end too.
What's like? Is it a Google thing?
It might be my internet, man. We've had just slow.
Really?
Yeah.
Who do you have? Time Warner?
Yeah. Well, it should be fine.
Yeah, you would think. Again, I don't
Nick,
care because the video and audio. I'm more worried about having good audio. So,
Right.
but yeah, what's up, Scott?
Nick, I got to reach out to the guys for the draft show. I kind of forgot to do that.
Oh, okay.
For the for the other SB Nation sites.
Yeah.
Nick, that episode was 22 minutes and 50 seconds.
Yeah, it was pretty short.
That's what she said. Oh,
Yeah, that was a long
miss-
time ago.
I missed that site.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
That was back
June
when we were
15th.
known as Who Day Weekly.
June 15th, 2011.
I think, yeah, that was the second, because you came out on episode 30.
Did I?
Yeah.
so if we can't rent the headsets, we just bring in our mics, or what do you want to do?
I'll make it happen.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. I would much rather do headsets so that we could be hands-free and not worry about mics getting in the way. Because then you got to deal with mic stands or boom arms, and if we can do headsets, that would be so much better. But yeah, we'll figure it out. And hopefully, if we can't find anybody that rents them, maybe we can get a sponsor to help us out.
I'm gonna try to tweet one of my buddies. I used to play hockey with a guy that did a morning show here in Cincinnati, and see if he might know of anyone that we could.
What was his name?
His real name is Jeff Janicek.
I know him.
He was really.
He used to work here in Toledo.
Oh yeah. Him and Tim.
Tim.
Yeah, I
don't
played
do
hockey with Jeff. No, they went down to Arkansas. I don't think Jeff does radio anymore.
No, he does social media he lives in New Orleans.
Right.
That's so funny. Yeah, Jeff lived here in here in Perrysburg. while him and Tim were on the air here in Toledo. They came to Toledo after Cincinnati,
After Cincinnati, right?
and then they went down to Arkansas.
Right.
That's so funny. That's what a small world.
I know. So I'll shoot him a message and see if he knows anyone that rents them or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, it can't hurt. I was actually I was talking to him a few years ago about like coming in and shadowing him during their morning show, and we just never could make it happen.
Okay.
A small world.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Tim and Jeff in the morning.
He's a really cool guy.
All right, fellas.
Yep, I got to go to work, unfortunately.
All right, boys. I will catch you on the flip side.
Brett, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it. And I'll
See you,
talk to you
Brett.
guys next week. Later.